Welcome back to the Deep Dive. And I have to be completely honest with you right up front today. We are wading into some incredibly turbulent waters.
That might be
Yeah. We're not just talking about a movie trailer. We are looking at a very specific, very heated vein of cultural criticism that is currently pointing its laser sights directly at Hollywood.
It is a fascinating area to study, because it sits right at that intersection of nostalgia, politics, and the sheer business of story.
Right.
It's where all your childhood memories just collide with the modern.
Exactly. And the catalyst, the spark that lit this particular fire is a trailer. Specifically, the trailer for the new Masters of the Universe. Remember He-Man, right?
Yeah.
The blonde page boy haircut, furry loincloth, by the power of Grayskull.
Oh, it's hard to forget. I mean, that was a staple of the 80s toy box, a cultural icon, for better or worse.
Right. But listen, we are not here to review the trailer itself.
Yeah.
We're not here to speculate on, Rotten Tomatoes scores or box office receipts. That is not our job today. Our job is to look at the reaction to that trailer. We are doing a deep dive into a commentary by a man named John Delarose.
And for anyone who might not know the name, Delarose is a sci-fi and fantasy author. He's written books like The Demon's Eye, which actually comes up later in his argument.
It does.
But in this context, I think you should see him less as just an author and more as a very loud signal flare for a specific segment of fandom.
A signal flare. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, he's speaking for creators and for consumers who feel completely alienated and, frankly, attacked by what he calls the leftist monoculture in entertainment.
Leftist monoculture.
Yeah.
Okay, that is a heavy phrase right out of the gate.
It is, and it really sets the stage for his entire worldview. You have to understand, he isn't just saying, I don't like the lighting in the scene or the casting seems off.
No, this is much bigger than that for him.
It's so much bigger. He's arguing that there is a systemic ideological machine, what he often refers to as the woke brigade, or even in his darker moments, a death cult that is actively trying to dismantle traditional storytelling and, in his view, societal norms.
A death cult. Okay, hold on. You're talking about societal collapse and death cults.
Yeah.
Are we really going to get all of that from a 2-minute trailer for a movie about a guy with a magic sword and a green tiger?
I know.
That feels like a massive leap.
It sounds like a leap to the casual observer, absolutely. But that is exactly our mission, to unpack why that leap exists. Why does a trailer for a nostalgic, almost silly property trigger such an intense philosophical breakdown?
Okay.
We need to look at his theories on normalization, the specific narrative formulas he thinks are ruining cinema, and this profound, bone-deep breakdown of trust between studios and legacy fans.
So they should probably tease the hook right away.
Yeah.
Because it caught me completely off guard. I think this is just about, casting choices or costumes or something.
It's part of it.
Part of it, sure. But Delarose draws a line that connects He-Man to Seinfeld.
Yes.
Kevin Smith. And the broader concept of gender ideology.
It's a wild connection on the surface.
Yeah, I did not see Seinfeld coming into a He-Man discussion.
Oh.
Still trying to wrap my head around that one.
Well, it's a really complex argument about how humor functions in society. But before we get to the philosophy, we have to start with the crime scene, so to speak.
The inciting incident.
The moment in the trailer that set this whole analysis.
Okay, let's do it. Let's unpack this he-him controversy.
Yeah.
The whole thing really centers on one specific joke in the trailer. We see Prince Adam, that's He-Man's alter ego, and there is a moment, a line, involving the usage of pronouns.
Right.
Specifically, it's a play on words comparing He-Man to the pronouns he, him.
Right. So visually, you have the character likely in a moment of confusion or maybe introduction, and the dialogue itself references he, him alongside the name He-Man. Now, if you're just scrolling through Twitter or, watching the trailer while you eat your lunch.
Yeah, you're not really paying close attention.
Exactly. You might see that and think, okay, it's a little meta joke. It's wordplay. He-Man, he, him. I get it. Cute.
It seems harmless. It seems like a pretty standard kind of winking at the camera joke for a modern movie. But Delarose argues that if you think it's just a joke, you are falling into a trap.
A very specific trap. And to illustrate it, he actually engages with a comment from a writer at the Babylon Bee. Now, for context, the Babylon Bee is a satirical site that, usually leans pretty conservative. They mock woke culture constantly.
So you'd think they would be on Delarose's side. You'd think they'd be allies on it.
You would think. But the Bee writer's take was essentially, hey man, relax, it's just a joke. I hate DEI casting too, but this is just a funny line. The writer was dismissing the outrage, effectively saying, don't take it so seriously.
And I'm guessing Delarose wasn't having any of that.
Not even a little bit. He sees that dismissal, that attitude of it's just a joke, as the very mechanism of...
Wow.
He argues that even people who claim to be on his side, who claim to dislike what he calls DEI slop, are being tricked by the format of humor. He believes that Hollywood knows exactly what it's doing.
What does he mean by that, though? Tricked how?
He argues that the studios are smart enough to know that if they lecture the audience directly, if He-Man turned to the camera and gave a 2-minute speech about gender identity,
people would walk out. It would be a disaster.
The audience would revolt. They would turn it off. It would be too obvious, too preachy.
So they sneak it in. It's like hiding broccoli in the mac and cheese for your kid.
Precisely. That is the perfect analogy. They package it as... And this brings us to his theory of normalization.
Okay.
The argument is that humor is it's a sedative. If you laugh at a concept, or if you frame a concept as a lighthearted quip, you are subconsciously lowering your defense. You aren't critically analyzing the idea. You're just enjoying the dopamine hit of the laugh. And once you laugh, he says, you've implicitly accepted the premise of the joke. You've let it in.
And this is where that kind of surprising history lesson comes in. He doesn't just say, this is happening now with He-Man. He actually tracks this tactic back decades.
Yes, and this is where he brings in Kevin Smith and Seinfeld.
Yeah.
It's actually a really detailed breakdown from his perspective. He points to Kevin Smith's early career. We're talking movies like Clerks and Mallrats. And then
right.
He says those movies were full of gay jokes. They were edgy, they were offensive by today's standards, and people laughed. But then, a few years later, Smith makes the film Chasing Amy, where the entire moral arc shifts to acceptance and understanding sexual fluidity.
So he thinks the early jokes were, grooming the audience, preparing them for the message.
In a sense, yes. Or at least softening the ground, making the topic less taboo. But the Seinfeld example is even more potent for his argument. He references the famous episode The Outing. You know, the one where Jerry and George are mistaken for a couple and they keep denying it while adding that catchphrase?
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
An all-time classic line.
An all-time classic. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Now, most people, myself included, probably view that as a classic comedy. It's funny because they are panicked about being perceived as gay, but they're socially obligated to be polite about it. The comedy comes from their squirming.
Right. It's mocking their social awkwardness, not the concept itself.
But Del Arroz views it completely differently. He sees it as a stepping stone in social engineering.
Social engineering from Seinfeld.
He argues that by making the audience laugh at that specific phrase, by repeating not that there's anything wrong with that as a punchline over and over, you are normalizing the shift in cultural values.
How so?
Well, you start by laughing at their discomfort, but the repetition drills the literal moral into your head, and eventually the irony fades, and the statement just becomes the standard. There's nothing wrong with that. The joke becomes the belief.
Wow. So he thinks Seinfeld was basically a psychological operation. That's a huge claim about a show about nothing.
He views it as part of a long-term process, yet a soft power to shift the Overton window of what's acceptable. So applying that same logic to He-Man, his fear is that by having He-Man make a He-Manu joke, the studio is trying to normalize the concept of stating pronouns in everyday life.
Because let's be real, most people don't introduce themselves with their pronouns in casual conversation. It's a very specific cultural practice.
Exactly. Del Arroz argues normal people don't talk like that. Normal people don't think about their pronouns. By inserting it into the dialogue of a flagship franchise, even as a joke, the studio is forcing the audience to engage with the framework of gender ideology.
They're making it seem normal.
They're making pronoun discourse a standard part of the vocabulary, even for a barbarian fantasy hero from another planet.
But wait, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. Couldn't you argue the movie is laughing at the concept? You know, like, look how silly this modern world is, He-Man doesn't get it. You could be making fun of the whole pronoun thing.
That is the meta defense, and Del Arroz shuts that down completely. He basically says, don't fall for that. He asks the listener to look at the power dynamic. He predicts there will be no payoff where He-Man rejects the concept.
What do you mean by payoff?
There won't be a scene where He-Man slams his sword down and says, this is stupid, I am a man, enough of this. He won't get to crack the pronoun thing and come out on top.
Right. That scene probably isn't in the script. I think that's a safe bet.
No. Instead, Del Arroz believes He-Man is the one being mocked. He uses the term cucked, which is very loaded, but it's his term to describe the character's position in that. The joke is on him for not understanding or for being out of touch.
So He-Man is the butt of the joke.
He is the butt of the joke, and the modern perspective is the one holding the power in the...
That's a really crucial distinction for him, isn't it? It's all about who holds the status in the scene. Is it the traditional hero Or is it the modern critique of that hero?
Precisely. And speaking of critiques, we need to talk about his broader terminology. We've mentioned it a couple of times already, but we need to really dig into this phrase he uses, DEI slop.
DEI slop. Yeah, it is a recurring, very visceral term in his commentary.
It is.
It doesn't sound appetizing.
It's not meant to be. DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, in a corporate HR handbook, those are initiatives to broaden representation, ensure fairness in hiring, things like that.
The stated goals.
The stated goal. But for Del Arroz and for the specific subculture, DEI is not an HR policy. It is a creative death sentence.
He calls it a mandate that ruins everything it touches. That's a direct quote.
It's not just an annoyance for him, it's a destructive force.
But
he argues that it prioritizes identity politics over storytelling competence, over plot, over character, and he brings receipts, or at least a long list of casualties.
Oh yeah, the list.
He rattles off a litany of franchises that he believes have been gutted by Star Trek, Star Wars, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Doctor Who, Dungeons & Dragons, Stranger.
That is basically everything. That is the entire pop culture landscape of the last 40 years.
That's his point. He argues that this isn't an isolated incident, it's a monoculture. If it was just one indie movie doing this, he says he wouldn't care. But because it is every major IP, he sees it as a coordinated attack.
An attack.
And his main grievance here is what he calls visual uniformity.
Okay, now that phrase confused me. What does he mean by visual uniformity? Usually, diversity implies difference, not uniformity. It seems like a contradiction.
It does on the surface. But he argues that everything looks the same because it all follows the same casting check. He says if there was a race swap in one movie, nobody would know. Maybe it's a cool take on the character. But because it's in every single thing, it becomes a glaring pattern.
It stops feeling like an artistic choice and starts feeling like a quota.
Exactly. It feels artificial. It breaks his immersion because he stops seeing characters and starts seeing mandates.
And he brings up the video game Fable as a prime example here. I remember seeing that trailer. It was very distinct.
It was. And Del Arroz critiques it heavily. He notes that Fable is a medieval fantasy setting, deeply based on European folklore and British humor. Yet the trailer, in his words, devoid of white.
Okay.
And he sarcastically asks if the cool kids call that cultural. For him, it's an erasure of the source material's identity, very to fit a modern political requirement.
And he applies this same lens to the Masters of the Universe cast.
Immediately. Specifically, he points out the character Man-at-Arms being racist. In the original cartoon, Man-at-Arms was a white guy with a big classic fantasy arc. In the new movie, he's played by a black actor. Del Arroz also meant a ginger side character. He's probably referring to Tila, redhead. For Del Arroz, these aren't artistic choices to find the best actor for the role. They are boxes being checked on a corporate spreadsheet.
There's something in his tone here that I think is important to highlight. It's not just anger. I was listening closely, and there's this sense of deep exhaustion.
That's a very keen observation. It's not just rage, it's fatigue. He describes a segment of society that is essentially pleading, let me enjoy the corporate brand they haven't destroyed yet.
Yeah, they're running out of places to hide.
Exactly. It's a feeling of being under siege. He feels like every safe harbor of nostalgia, the things he loved growing up, the things that gave him comfort, is being systematically dismantled and replaced slop.
It's like he's saying, can't I just have this one thing? Can't He-Man just be He-Man? And the answer he feels he's getting from Hollywood is a resounding no. Everything must change. Everything must serve the message.
And that exhaustion, that fatigue, it turns into a complete refusal to give Hollywood the benefit of the doubt.
No more chances.
Zero. He mentions the famous X-Files poster, the UFO with I Want to Believe.
Sure.
He says fans are delusional. They want to believe this He-Man movie will be good because they love the character, clinging to hope. But he argues that believing at this point is a mistake. He calls it a delusion.
Because the track record is just too long and too consistent in his eyes.
In his view, yeah. Why would this one be different if the same producers, the same writers, and the same ideology are running the show? And this leads us to his analysis of the plot itself. Because, and this is fast, he doesn't just hate the cast, he thinks he knows exactly what happens in the movie without seeing it.
This is the part that I found really, really interesting, the narrative formula. He has this theory that modern Hollywood only knows how to make one type of movie.
The Guardians of the Galaxy print.
Right. James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy, which, let's be fair, was a huge hit. It was fun, it was fresh, everybody loved it. So why is that a bad thing?
Well, Del Arroz argues that Hollywood learned the wrong lesson. They didn't learn be creative or take risks. They just learn to copy-paste the formula.
So they're just making photocopies.
And they are applying that specific template to characters where he feels it does not belong. The archetype is a protagonist like Star-Lord, who is a man raised on Earth, thrust into a weird new world. He's goofy, he listens to 80s music, he's a bit of a man-child, a lovable screw-up.
Okay, that works for Star.
Yeah.
That's his whole vibe. It defines him.
It does. But does it work for He-Man? Arroz argues absolutely not. He views He-Man as a pinnacle of masculine competence. We're talking about a character defined by muscle, power, and fighting evil with, serious, straightforward strength.
The most powerful man in the universe. It's in the name.
It's literally the brand. But Arroz predicts this movie will strip all of that away to fit the action comedy mold.
So instead of the barbarian hero, we're going to get, what? An incompetent doofus who makes quips and trips over his own sword.
That is his exact prediction. He believes He-Man will be portrayed as untrained, clueless, maybe even cowardly at first. He's been on Earth. He doesn't know the ways of Eternia. And because he is incompetent, he creates a power vacuum that filled.
Filled by who?
By the strong female character, and as he specifically notes, her black friend. This is the core of his narrative critique. He argues that the power dynamic will be flipped on its head.
How so?
These side characters won't just be helpers, they won't just be supporting cast, they will be shown as strictly better than the male hero throughout the entire movie.
Strictly better.
They will have to rescue him, explain things to him, teach him how to fight, and essentially babysit him while he fumbles around trying to figure out his magic sword. The hero becomes the student, and not in a good way.
He seems really, really confident in this prediction, and he actually uses James Gunn's upcoming Superman project as proof that this pattern is real and is being implemented across the board.
Yes, he goes into a very specific, very vivid critique of the alleged plot for the new. And this is where we really see his frustration with the formula bubble surface. He claims the movie portrays Superman not as a beacon of hope, but as a failure.
A failure? It's Superman. The original Superman.
According to Arroz's breakdown of the plot, Superman makes people mad. He tries to save the day but fails. He causes collateral damage. And then he gets kidnapped by Lex Luthor.
Okay, Superman getting kidnapped by Luthor isn't new. That happens. But Arroz had a very specific take on this version of Lex Luthor.
Oh, absolutely. This is a key part of his argument about Hollywood's priority. He claims Luthor is written explicitly as an Elon Musk stand-in.
Like a goofy, awkward tech bro, not the cold, calculating genius.
Exactly. He describes a scene where Luthor isn't the menacing, brilliant industrialist from the comic. He's a caricature designed to mock a real-world person, the writer.
So it's not about the story. It's about scoring political.
That's his view. He argues the writers are so obsessed with mocking Elon Musk that they sacrifice the integrity of their main villain to do it. He even describes Luthor getting arrested not for some master plan, but for something petty and stupid, stripping him of his dignity just to make a contemporary reference.
So Superman is in jail. And Lex Luthor is tweeting.
Superman sits in prison for an hour of the movie's runtime, according to Arroz. And here is the kicker, Sam.
Let me guess, not Superman.
Correct. Lois Lane, who is portrayed as smarter than him, and Mr. Terrific, another superhero who is portrayed as more competent and technologically advanced, they do the actual saving.
Wow.
It's the same formula he predicts for He-Man. The titular male hero is deconstructed, diminished, and humiliated, while the diverse supporting cast demonstrates their clear superiority.
But he thinks Masters of the Universe is walking right into this same exact trap.
He believes it is inevitable. He says, quote, "It's the same move. Whether it's Star-Lord, Superman, or He-Man, they are all being ground down into this incompetent male, competent female dynamic. It's the only story they know how to tell."
Hearing it laid out like that, you can see why he's so frustrated. If you truly believe that every movie you go to see is just a remix of incompetent male hero saved by better female hero, that would get pretty annoying regardless of your politics.
It would. It destroys the fantasy for him. He wants the fantasy of competence. He wants the masculine concept, as he puts it. The very simple, straightforward idea of a hero who can save the day because he is strong.
And when that is subverted,
he doesn't see it as adding depth or modernizing the character. He sees it as an ideological attack on masculinity.
This brings us to a really dark part of his comment. I mean, we've talked about frustration and exhaustion, but he uses some extremely heavy language as he goes on. He calls the people behind this a death cult.
It's a shocking phrase, but it's crucial to understanding the intensity. He says, everything they're trying to destroy, every death. He's not talking about bad writing anymore. He isn't saying, oh, the script needed a second draft.
No, this is a moral crusade for him.
He's talking about a moral battle between forces of creation and forces of destruction.
So and fighting it means what? Just complaining on YouTube?
Yeah.
Because that doesn't seem to be changing anything.
Well, he acknowledges that complaining isn't enough. In fact, he points to the institutional inertia of Hollywood to show why complaining alone won't change the studios.
The inertia? What does he mean?
The fact that nothing changes at the top, the people who fail keep getting jobs. He points at a specific example that he views as the smoking gun, the writer of the Bat.
Oh, right, the famous Batgirl movie that Warner Bros. Spent $90 million on and then just deleted.
Yeah.
They literally erased it from existence for a tax write-off because it was reportedly so bad.
That's the one. Now, in a normal meritocracy, if you write a movie that is so bad the studio would rather burn the footage than show it, your career might...
You would think.
You might have to go write commercials for a while. You'd be in what they call movie jail.
Right. You're in movie for a long time.
But De La Rosa points out that this same writer is now the main bat for James Gunn.
Wait, serious. The writer of the unreleasable Batgirl is now writing the new Bat.
That is De La Rosa's claim, and he uses it as proof that Hollywood is not operating in good faith. He's saying if they cared about quality, about making good movies for the audience, that would never happen.
But because it's about the message.
But because they are pushing an agenda, he argued, the personnel remains the same as long as they serve the ideology. The machine keeps churning. The same people who ruined one thing are promoted to ruin the next more important thing.
He also brings up Kevin Smith again here, doesn't he? Specifically regarding Masters of the Universe.
He does. He reminds everyone that Kevin Smith, who he refers to charmingly as Silent Bob the Vegan Nut Job, already ruined Masters of the Universe with the Netflix animated series.
Oh, Revelation. I remember that. That was hugely controversial with the fan base.
Extremely, for many of the same reasons. He-Man was sidelined, other characters took the spotlight. De La Rosa says people ignored it or forgave it because it's just a cartoon. But now, he says, live action is repeating the exact same mistake.
The definition of insanity.
Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
So if you can't change Hollywood, if the inertia is too strong and the cult is too deep, what do? This is where the episode pivots, right? Because De La Rosa isn't just a critic, he's a creator. He has a solution.
Right. He is proposing an alternative economy. If the monoculture won't serve you, you have to build your own culture. You have to take your ball and go to a different court.
And this is where he pitches his own book, The Demon's Eye. And the sales pitch it's fascinatingly specific. It's almost aggressive in its specificity.
It is directly tailored to address every single grievance he's just spent an hour listing. He describes it as classic fantasy, sword and sorcery, and then he explicitly says no pronouns.
No pronouns. I have to stop on that. No pronouns. How do you write a book with no pronouns? Is it just He-Man picked up sword, He-Man swung sword?
Laughs. You'd think so. It would certainly be an avant-garde choice. Demons. But obviously, he doesn't mean he has eliminated she and it from the English language.
Right. Okay, good. That would be unreadable.
What he means is no modern gender ideology. But the fact that he phrases it that way, no pronoun, is a dog whistle. It's a powerful signal flare to his audience.
What's the signal?
He is telling them, I am a safe harbor. My work is I am providing the thing that you remember loving, the classic escapism. You don't have to worry about being lectured here.
He also throws a little shade at George R.R. Martin while he's at it, doesn't he?
He does. He makes it a point to emphasize that the Demon's Eye book, he says, can read this and you're done.
Not so subtle dig.
It's a huge dig at the endless weights in modern fantasy. He's selling reliance. He's selling tradition. He's basically saying, unlike these other guys, I will respect your time and I will respect your value.
He even muses that Hollywood should be hiring him if they were serious about their stated goals.
He says, if you really want a difference, they should be hired. Or he argues that if Hollywood actually wanted real diversity of thought, diversity of world, they would hire conservatives. They would hire people who hate the current formula.
But he knows that's not going to happen.
He immediately acknowledges they never will. And that's the tragedy. He believes he has the solution, the content they want, but the death cult of Hollywood would rather burn money on failures than hire someone like him.
So the only option left is to build these parallel structures.
Indie books, indie comics, crowdfunding, whole separate ecosystem.
So let's zoom out. We've covered a lot of ground here. We've looked at the he-him joke as a supposed psychological weapon, the theory of sedative humor, the visceral hatred of DEI slop, the repetitive, incompetent hero narrative formulas, and this desire for a parallel.
I think the biggest takeaway here, if we step back from the specific details of He-Man, are the total unmitigated collapse.
Yeah, that seems to be the undercurrent of everything we've discussed. It's not about one bad...
It's about a relationship between audience and creator that is fundamentally, perhaps irreparably broken. De La Rosa and the audience he represents do not view a movie trailer as a preview of entertainment. They view it as evidence of a crime.
A crime against their culture, a crime against their memories.
Exactly. Every joke is a psychological operation. Every casting choice is a political mandate. Every plot point is a subversion of their values. There is no innocent consumption of media left for this demographic. They can't just sit back and watch the movie.
No, they have to scan it.
They have to scan it. It's exhausting just thinking about it. To watch a trailer and have to scan it for normalization techniques. Is that a joke or is that a psyop? Is that casting choice merit-based or is it a mandate?
It sounds like a miserable way to watch a movie.
It is exhausting. But if you believe, as he does, that the other side is actively trying to destroy society, then that vigilance feels necessary. It feels like self-defense. They believe they are the last line of defense, kind of culture, a certain kind of story.
And that leads us to the final thought for today. We always try to leave you with something to chew on. If Del Arroz is right, and we're not saying he is, but let's follow the thought experiment. If humor really is the most effective tool for normalization, and if just a joke is never really just a joke, what does that say about where we are as a society?
It raises a really provocative question. We used to say that shared laughter brings people together. Laughter was the universe, the great unifier. But if we are now analyzing jokes like forensic evidence at a crime scene, looking for the hidden agenda, the ideological fingerprint, does that mean the era of a shared cultural language?
Can we ever just take a joke again?
Or is every single punchline now a political battleground?
That is a heavy thought to leave you with, but that's what we do here. We unpack the layers until we hit the bedrock.
And sometimes the bedrock is pretty hard.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Masters of the Universe controversy. We'll catch you on the next one.
Stay curious.